Welcome to the NCO Guide. You're tuned in to podcast number 2. This week we're talking about trust. I'm your host, Command Sergeant Major Dan Elder, U.S. Army retired.
And I'm Archie Davis, Command Sergeant Major retired.
And welcome to the NCO Guide. If you were with us last time, you kind of heard us start up and begin the conversation. The NCO Guide is not a book. It's more, if you think of somebody who grabs another person by the hand and helps them through their journey, that's what the NCO podcast is we recognize non-commissioned officers and soldiers sometimes need advice, counsel, good ideas, and somebody to bounce things off of. So with that, we've created the Non-Commissioned Officer Guide podcast. And you can find us at danelder.com. Download our podcasts. You can read our blogs. You can phone in questions at our hotline, 254-853-4410. You can post comments on the blog. Join in the conversation. So we just want to say welcome. We're glad you signed up and listened to the podcast. And this week, we've got a topic that's hot in the Army. Archie, I know you've had some interactions, and we've all kind of been paying attention to the dialogue that's going on in the Army. And one of the key topics that we hear being discussed in a lot of different channels is trust. So we're going to take a look at a few things, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on trust and maybe kind of what in your mind, what the Army's thinking about and why we're focusing on trust as a topic.
Well, first of all, I'd like to start off with a quote, unknown writer, but it went like this: trust is like a mirror. Once it's broken, you can never look at it the same. And bottom line is you have trust is what actually runs the Army. You know, trust is that foundation for success in all Army activities. Trust is that confidence and that belief in the competence, character, and commitment of an individual, group, unit, or organization to accomplish the mission. So I believe that we need to actually make it a priority for our institutions that's training our leaders to put priority there within the trust realm.
Yeah, it appears to me that there is a campaign across the Army. There's a lot of leaders talking about it. As a matter of fact, the Center for Army Professional Ethics has put together a number of tools, training tapes, videos. Army leaders are talking about trust. The Army as a whole is trying to wrap its arm around how do we espouse trust as a important value that we help soldiers understand and define, and basically to adopt trust not only as their own. Not only as their own mantra or their own something that they take internally and use it, but also to me it's a message externally about don't break trust that soldiers have in their nation and their country and their leaders. I believe it's internal and external. So now speaking of that center cape. CAPE has defined trust as the assured reliance on the character, ability, strength, and truth of someone or something. So those words are very specific. I'm sure they chose them for a reason. Character, ability, strength, and truth of someone or something. So, you know, if I think about in my own career as a soldier, I think about character and how character is something that's very personal and something that changes and matures along with the individual. So Archie, the first one, character. Character to me is kind of it's what I am, what my makeup is, and how I've come up as an individual and the person I've grown into. What's your take on character?
Yes, Dan, that is correct. However, we need to make sure that it's aligned with the values within the Army, and we need to ensure that that we as leaders are examples for the soldiers. So if it was something out of character, we've got to condition ourselves to ensure that we get that in line, because as you said, the definition of that trust is relies on that character and that competence and that commitment of that soldier or that leader. And that leader is always under the light, because somebody want to be that leader. And like I said, once you break that trust, just like a mirror, you can't look at it the same again. And you have to ensure that it over time, okay, you have to build that trust back again. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to spend, everybody has, the same amount of time. And we don't need that, especially when we are trying to condition soldiers, make mission out there. We want to set the example off and ensure that we don't break that trust.
You bring up a great point on Army values. I know for a fact that we drill into young soldiers as soon as they enter the Army about the 7 core values of the Army: loyalty, duty, respect, personal courage, honor, integrity, and I know I just missed one. I just went through it myself. Selfless service I believe, was the last one. So, the acronym, of course, is leadership, LDR, SHIP. So, as you think about trust, where does trust align in the 7 Army values? It's not a value in itself. It's not one of the core values, but it's obviously an important element. And now we're introducing new additional terms to go along with it. And so we're looking at character now, and we also talked about competence, and we talked about strength and truth, and each of them have their own unique definition, but they all also play in with or complement the 7 Army values. Archie, I'm sure you remember when we first joined the Army. We had the 5 C's: the courage, competence, candor, commitment, and boy, it's been so long I can't remember what that 5th one was. But and it was built into the evaluation report, if you remember. So when the Army adopted the core values, the 7 core values, the 5 C's kind of went away, and we brought. And we brought these along, but they really didn't go away. I mean, they're still in our doctrine. So it's not like we only have 7 words, and those are the words that we use. This adds more. This fidelity adds more clarity. It helps us understand and bring in some other elements of what being a good soldier is about.
Yes, and I see that in our Army. We've got some things that I was looking at fact sheet there that came out of Cape, and it was over 20,000 respondents to a survey, and this fact sheet that was provided to them. And out of that survey, one of the bullets stated that over 70% trust their unit and organizational leaders to make right decisions. That's 70%. It's not real high, but it's 70% and something to focus on to build over 70%. One of the other comments is that bullets were that over 90% agree that being a leader of character is the hallmark of an Army professional. And I really agree with that as well. Respondents, 90% agree that the Army values are consistent with their personal values. And that's great. That's something to build upon. That's something that we should focus on, so that, if in fact someone might get into a predicament that now they're distrusted, we can build upon those values of the masses in order to get back in focus. It's a couple of things that I want to look at and talk about that actually distracts from trust. And I want to kind of hit on those, and then we'll go into some things that actually contribute to trust. So, we see what's happening out in the Army, and we see these things, and we hear them, or we see them on blogs, and I'm just going to go over a few of them. Lack of values. That was one of the big things that distracts from trust, and we were just talking about it. The lack of values. Leaders who do not live up to the Army values. Okay? That is a big distraction of trust. We preach the Army values, we teach the Army values, and then when you have a leader that does not live them, then we got a problem of trust. Hypocrisy, toxic leadership, incompetency, do as I say, not as I do. Those are some of the things under, the lack of values. That is a direct distraction from trust.
Those are great points, Archie. I appreciate that. Lack of values. If you consider that so few of our nation serves in any capacity in the military, less than 1% is the number I quite often hear. We recognize, well, first off, you have to analyze that. Not everybody's qualified to even enter the service. There's a number of reasons that disqualify. Some are fairly easy to understand. Age, if you're 15, you're not qualified. Once you get over a certain age, this is a young person's activity, some will say, and actually, not as many are qualified to enter of our nation's citizens at any one time. But there's others, such as obesity, which is such a problem in this nation. But where I'm going with this is, as you look at the society we recruit from, we the Army and industry and academia and our sister services, in a lot of cases, are all vying for the same recruits. Schools want to put graduating high school seniors into classrooms. They want them to go on to college, which is one of the decisions that have to be made when young men and women leave our schools and make those decisions. So the fact that we have such a small sector of society that chooses to join the military, what we can't do is an institution is though we attempt to identify what we can about the recruits as they're coming in. We have them go through tests. They sit and talk with recruiters and induction personnel and meet with a number of people who attempt to evaluate and determine in a really short period of time if this person meets our standards to enter this profession. And in these short interactions, it's really simple for somebody to hide their real selves. So when a person enters this environment, which for a lot of people is quite foreign, much different than what they've grown up with or the type of environment they've come in. They're now thrust into a regimented group that puts a lot of requirements on them. The one thing we just don't know, and we have to evaluate and kind of develop in these people is their value systems. And people come in with their value systems at various levels from homes that may be considered broken, or those who may be living the American dream, to single parent or single parent families, or raised by grandparents or extended families, to maybe institutions or agencies. So the value system is something that we have to, as an institution, really work on throughout the career, throughout the entire career of a soldier. And when they first enter, we're really building the foundation. But it doesn't end there. A lot of times, it's only through maybe scattered returns to military institutions and academies that we see formally a discussion of values. But what we don't often do or recognize, we probably do it and just don't recognize it, and that is the continued development within an operational assignment in a unit, the continued development and building upon the value systems of a soldier. So, just by the people that individuals interact with, we oftentimes see their values in their actions or lack of values in their actions, and we can either choose to emulate, copy, or we can, some of the best lessons I've learned were how not to do things from leaders or people I've served with. So that's such a great point, that the absence of values, or values that are not in keeping with the Army's core values, is a challenge, and it's something that we as leaders and non-commissioned officers, we have to consider and include it in not only our own personal development, but in the development of our subordinates and those that we come in contact with. Another topic was ability, and I think ability, if you kind of think about technical competence or your own your own internal knowledge and information stores. What do you uploaded to your own personal hard drive in your brain? What do you have the ability to do? So Archie, what's some thoughts you might have on abilities and how that applies to trust?
Well, we talked about once if that trust breakdown, it's a few things. It's the lack of competence, character, and commitment, and that lack of being competent distracts from that trust. That incompetence, or that good old boy system that you might be relying on instead of relying on your own competence. We see that happens as well around our organization. And that is a distraction from trust. It's a direct distraction from trust. So when we see that happen, then we need to say something about it. We need to tell somebody about it. Because it's just like a virus. It will affect the whole organization. And I'm still on the topic of things that, distract from this trust. And that's one of the big ones, incompetency in the good old boy system. And then also, it might be some office politics, if you want to call it. Things that, it's not You don't know if it's true or not, but you put it out as truth. And when it's not and you have your subordinates hearing it, then guess what? It's going to distract from trust.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Incompetence to me is the opposite of ability. Ability is a skill and a talent, and I think we expect that in our leaders. We expect them to possess the skills necessary for them to serve at the grade in the position that they're serving. I had this discussion just recently. We were talking about expectations, and the expectation is when you get a leader in a certain grade that they are proficient at their particular pay grade in the duty position they're assigned. And one of the things that kind of struck me is the Army promotes based on potential. So the only way that leaders and boards can relatively evaluate potential in a lot of cases is by past performance. So what will happen is when a member achieves the standard, once they have met all of the gates that the Army promotion system has laid out in front of them, and achieve excellence, and are clearly ahead of their peers, they are selected based on the potential that they are going to serve successfully at the next grade and rank in their next assignment. Well, as soon as you pin that person, the stripes on them, they're not necessarily an expert at that next grade. They must grow into that. They must develop. And that ability, that skill and talent, they grow that over a period of time. So this is where the expectation management comes in. If you really think about it, if you've ever worked for a leader or somebody who you've seen who's a peer, and you thought, wow, how did they get promoted to this level? Sometimes you've got to cut them some slack. I hear it quite often that we may be raising a generation, or there may be somebody who's incompetent. Well, you've got to consider. I'm not giving anybody a pass here, but when you make those evaluations, you have to consider where they're at in their own cycle of development. And if they're a brand new, pick a grade that they were promoted to, and have they attended the schools that they should have? Have they had the assignments that they have? There's a difference between inexperienced and incompetence, which is what Sergeant Major Davis just spoke of, was incompetence. There is a marked difference between the two, and that is something we must evaluate. So ability is one of the key components in defining trust, at least according to the Center for the Army Professional Ethic. A next one is truth. And if you think about it, our word is our bond. What we say, as Archie spoke of just recently, when it comes out of our mouth, our soldiers, our leaders, our subordinates and superiors all take us at our word, that we will be truthful in what we say. We will be truthful in word, and we'll be truthful in action. And it is a key component to trust. Archie, I'd sure like to hear your thoughts on how truth plays into this and the importance of truth.
Okay, Dan. I seen a actual phrase that was used on some things that I was reading over, and it was very true. It was saying that our audio and our video must align. Our audio and our video must align. We must be walking the talk and talking the walk. And when we do that, people see that we are authentic. People see, and they will want to trust us. And the truth is in the pudding, like a lot of people say. But, you should be that example, but that video and that audio should be online, should be the same. And when it's not, then you're going to be a distraction from trust. So we need to make sure that audio and video is in line.
Great. According to Kate, again, trust is the assured reliance on the character, ability, strength, and truth of someone or something. Such great terms. So that's kind of our take on how we dissect Kate's definition of trust. What I'd like to do is take a look at or take a listen to the SMA, Sergeant Major of the Army, Ray Chandler, has he has put out a video on trust and what his thoughts are on trust in the Army. And let's give it a listen. Let's hear what he's got to say. It's just a short little clip, and then we'll continue our discussion from there.
Our focus for the fourth quarter of America's Army, our profession, is trust. Trust is the bedrock of our relationship with the American people. They have entrusted the Army to provide for their defense. As Army professionals, it is our duty to continue to serve them in an effective and ethical manner. We must preserve the trust we have earned throughout our history. Additionally, trust among Army professionals is the foundation of our success. We earn and develop trust with our fellow soldiers and civilians by consistently demonstrating our professional competence, character, and commitment. The resulting trust creates a strong esprit de corps among Army professionals. It also serves as a vital organizing principle necessary for the Army to function as an effective and ethical profession. The way we reinforce our bedrock of trust with the American people is by ensuring that Army professionals exhibit military expertise and esprit de corps, serving honorably and steward the Army profession. During this quarter, I ask all leaders to include trust as a topic in professional development sessions. To accomplish this, you should emphasize the importance of making transparent, values-based decisions and maintaining candid communications. Promoting a positive command climate where soldiers and civilians at all levels are empowered to use their initiative and learn from their mistakes. The importance of trust between soldiers and Army civilians. Increasing awareness that in today's culture of instantaneous information, one incident of misconduct can jeopardize trust with the American people. The Center for the Army Profession and Ethic has established a website with products and resources to support the discussion of our profession, including trust. Videos, curriculum, posters, information papers, and brochures are available to support your unit and organization professional development programs at cape.army.mil.
So what I liked about the SMA's PSA was how he helped define where trust fits in as part of the professional Army ethic. And the key word he used was bedrock. He said trust was the bedrock. And I appreciate how he frames that, because to me, as I talked through the 7 values, the core values, and I even heard him use some of the C's from the 5 C's. By the way, I realized compassion was the 5th C that I'd missed in my discussion, and maybe even a few who know me would say that's no surprise. But in maturity comes knowledge. So I appreciate the fact that he was able to summarize very simply with a word, and that is how truth is the bedrock. And he went on to talk about some things, how one action of a soldier can reverberate across their squad or platoon. It can reverberate across the post, the theater. It can be national or international. I think about recent events in history, like the burning of the Quran, that happened, and soldiers videotaped it and posted it in a public forum that was able to be seen across the globe. And if you look at the response, the amount of people who responded internally and externally was tremendous. And if you really think, I believe it was a staff sergeant who either was implicated or was involved, or it was obviously a group or a number of folks. If you think how one sole individual can really take trust to the very extremes and consider how that impacts our Army and our nation. And it's such a significant word, bedrock of trust.
Yes. And, it's just another example of that is that, in fact, if the leader within your organization don't hold people accountable, time and time again, that would distract from trust. We call it passing the buck. Your subordinates know what that looked like. Passing the buck only for it to be placed right back on the soldier's lap. No accountability at the senior level then. They would think, and they would see it that, look, how can I trust this person that, maybe is not holding anybody accountable for anything? And it could be, the constant change and the constant reset of priorities. That distracts from trust. So what we need to do is make sure that we prioritize the things that we put out to those soldiers, and we hold our subordinate leadership accountable to see them through. We've got to see the full process of that mission, of that action, the follow-through, the passion. That's what these soldiers want to see. Because if not, it's going to distract from trust.
We're right now talking about trust of people. If you think about trust, when you're talking about intangibles, I trust when I sign for my weapon and take it out of the arms room, that when I load a magazine in it and I squeeze the trigger, I trust that rifle is going to operate as advertised. If it doesn't, I trust that I have the skills to take the type of action to put that rifle back into operation. That's trust in something. But what we're talking about now is trust in someone, trust in people. And one of the things that I want to touch on, Archie, is we're talking about soldiers' trust in their leaders. We're talking about subordinates and seniors trusting those who are appointed above them. But trust also it's two ways. And we as soldiers and individuals have trust in our leaders, not only our military leaders, but our elected leaders, our formal leaders, our national leaders, that they will, not only will we support and defend the Constitution and our nation, but that our nation will reciprocate and provide back to us the types of lifestyles that we believe have been laid for us. Now there, some will say that there are a few promises in this world. However, in this day and age, there's a number of benefits that soldiers have earned. There are benefits that have been offered. Some will say are promised. There are assurances. We look to equipping the soldier and think early on to our recent conflicts. the way soldiers were equipped, and whether it's body armor or vehicle armor or the type of equipment that can sustain some of the tough challenges that we were faced with overseas. Soldiers had trust that our nation would galvanize the industrial base and provide the type of equipment that we needed. Some would talk about the speed in which equipment was provided, perceptions or misperceptions up front. Some may have thought it was going to be a rapid war and the investment would be quick. And many who study the art of war may tell you, or those who have a good regional focus, it may have been no surprise to them that it wasn't so. However, the nation did galvanize its resources, and that as the times were appropriate and priorities were made, we see that the soldier was equipped at a higher level at the conclusion of Pick Iraq, recognizing Afghanistan soldiers are still fighting and dying, but at the conclusion, at the final days of Iraq, the American soldier was well equipped for that fight. However, the soldiers who participated in that fight and in wars in the past had, in return for their sacrifices, been offered certain elements, whether it's education or health or abilities to invest, and some of those are at risk today or have been attacked in the past, and we see that in the national news, and for some that appears to go against these tenets of this bedrock trust. And Archie, I'd love to hear some thoughts about how do soldiers who are focusing on their mission, how do they take that in their own evaluation, in their own how they're absorbing and trying to understand trust and the two-way nature of trust. You expect me to trust my leaders in the Army when in my nation when all of those may or may not be meeting my expectations?
Well, Dan, I think that it's all our business in order to work on that definition of trust. It's just like, we look at people. People are the Army. And when everyone is inspired to join that Army profession, their families join the Army family. Therefore, we are committed to a supportive and caring Army culture that strengthens family bonds and provides a secure, nurturing quality of life. Continuing to honor this goal is essential. Preserving trust between soldiers, their families, and the Army. So it's everybody's job to perform and work at this effort. And yes, every day is not a perfect day, but if we are all on the same course and we are trying to do better, we're going to have better things come from it. So, we talked about distractions from trust, and that whole list of distractions that we talked about, the lack of values and the good old boy network and the incompetency. We need to look at those as things that we should not do, of course, and then start putting time and effort on things that contribute to trust. And one of the big things that I see, Dan, is being the example. being the example soldier out there each and every day, looking in the mirror before we out, making sure that we are representing, we know that we are representing something larger than ourselves, and we're in that glass bubble, and in that glass bubble people are looking at, believe it or not, something to actually throw stones at, or so what we need to do is make sure that we give them something to say, hey man, I want to be like him or her. You know, I want to be that. So that's one of the big things that contribute to trust. Doing the right thing, leading from the front. Just doing the right thing. You know, the hard right over the easy wrong, I always call it. It's what we need to do to contribute to that trust. And then also being transparent. Transparency. You know, a good communication develops, it facilitates trust. So we need to look at, the receiver, the one that's sending the message, and making sure that whatever they perceive is right. It's on target. And we can facilitate that trust by good communications. And trust is built when transparency exists and honest decision making is used. See, if I don't know, I'm going to tell you that I don't know. But it don't stop there. I'm going to put my MP hat on, and I'm going to do like a soldier does, and we're going to figure it out. So one of the big things in transparency is saying you don't know when you don't know. And that goes a long way with contributing in trust.
You talk about transparency and saying, call it out when you don't know. That goes back to truth. I mean, it's one of the tenets of trust. Merriam-Webster, the way they define trust is a belief that something or someone's good, reliable, honest, and effective. And as I look at some of the blogospheres and some of the talking heads, and really there's an uproar in the retirement community and even for those who may be moving that way for the loss of benefits. The concern about recent cuts made or potential cuts to be made based around health care or health benefits, and whether it's Cape's definition or Merriam-Webster's definition, but I'm going to use Merriam for a minute just because I really want to emphasize a point. And Merriam says trust is the belief that someone, and I'm going to stick with that when we talked about the difference of something, my rifle works, and someone, do I trust this person or these people? So Merriam says trust is a belief that someone is reliable, good, honest, and effective. So using the example of cut benefits, reduced retirement benefits targeted only to the retirement community, to the retired military community, retirees, former soldiers just like yourselves, sometimes feel that they have lost their trust in our nation because of this event and other events that are on the back burner. Soldiers question their leaders, or whether it's elected or military, particularly during the time of the government shutdown. Soldiers challenged their leaders when tuition assistance was taken away. There is a lot of looking up. I was told when I was a young soldier, check down, not up. And what I was really basically being told is, take care of your own part of the Army and assume that those above you who those are their parts of the Army are doing the same. This is I don't believe that term is necessarily appropriate, other than a general reminder every now and then. But I tell you that I think personally, Dan Elder's opinion, that checking up is not always a bad thing. There's things that happen in this world, and not everybody needs their subordinates questioning them, but sometimes knowing and understanding is useful. But the point, not to get off track, the point I'm going back to here is it's easy to think that people are chipping away at things that you trusted that they would prevent. So going back to Miriam, based on some of those factors that I mentioned, TA and retirement or health care or government shutdowns, even with all of that being said, if I look collectively at my nation, at my elected leaders, whether it's Congress, whether it's the executive branch or the legislative branch or any of those who focus or who actually run our nation, whether it's the Army staff in the Pentagon or the Defense Department, using Merriam's definition, lumping them all together, do I believe that they are reliable? And my answer has to be yes, or our nation will fall. I have to believe that. If not, then we're not the country that we claim we are. Are they good? Well, I believe my leaders, whether it's elected, whether it's appointed, whether it's those who have been assigned from squad to the commander-in-chief, I have to believe that they are all good. I have to believe they are all honest. They are all effective. That's why they're there. I may not agree with some decisions they've made, but that's human nature. We all will disagree on some things. Collectively, when it's all brought together, I believe each one of them make up those tenets that Miriam claims equate to trust. And though I'm sad when we lose tuition assistance or the government shuts down or retirement is cut, I still believe we're all good. And those singular actions alone do not necessarily cause me to distrust. The problem becomes, and each person has their own limit, I believe, is how often, how many, and how this continues over time. And I can tell you, leaders must consider this. Soldiers will accept inequities in small doses. However, when you bring in the other elements of military expertise, honorable service, stewardship, when you bring in character, ability, strength, truth, when all of those come together, they all affect that and basically affect trust.
Yes, and those was great points, and I was just jotting some things down to just hamper on, and I talked about some of the things that you hit on then with things that distracts from trust. It's a perception out there that it's some inconsistency that's going on. As we come back from war, the red, white, and blue is flying, everybody hugging the soldier, thanking you for your service, awarding you, patting you on the back, and saying that they will help you with your PTSD, your wounds, and as you go out the door, then the headlines say, we need to cut this or that from possibly a soldier that's disabled, or possibly a soldier that's physically disabled, whether it's visual or something dealing with internal mental state. We see it's a perception out there that we have a consistency, but but it's a constant change. It's a resetting of priorities, and they might be because of budget, which most of them are. But those are the things that I talked about that distract from trust. Distract from trust from the American soldier. So those perceptions need to be cleared up. Or we need to define what we are doing. Because like I said at the beginning of this program, trust is like a mirror. Once it is broken, you can never look at it the same.
So you have to ask yourself, am I trustworthy? When you internalize your own level of trust, it's easy to think, how do I trust the people that I serve with, that I work with? How do I trust my leaders inside the Army, outside the Army? However, we challenge you to look inside, to look internally. Ask yourself, think about your own trustworthiness. Do your soldiers trust you? How do you rate yourself in these tenets that make up trust? Are you expert in your job? Do you have the abilities to perform the mission that you've been assigned? What about your character? What kind of character do you possess? How do you demonstrate that character in your deeds and actions? Do you tell the truth? Are you a truthful person? What do your soldiers think of you? Have you sat around in a conversation and asked those kind of questions? Have you carried on a conversation with your subordinates, one-on-one, in a group setting? You know, sometimes the best ways to learn about yourself. You know, there's an old saying that you can't fool your soldiers, and you know, there's a lot of truth in that. Those who you are closest to are more apt to see you in ways that you don't always see yourself. I know as I matured and grew as a soldier, it was apparent at different times and points in my career where my level of expertise may have been, but many times it wasn't. There were things that I didn't know about myself that it just through maturity and self-analysis that I learned. But to me, it was a surprise. Yet those around me, particularly if it was in a formal setting, usually in a schoolhouse or amongst your peers, where sometimes these things are discovered or teased out or brought out in some lesson or some example, that come to find out it was not a surprise to others, but it was a surprise to me. So as an individual, I take it and challenge you to consider your own trustworthiness and how you can influence, how you can make yourself better, how you can apply the types of thought, introspection, and maybe in some areas ways that you can improve so your trustworthiness becomes beyond reproach, and one that not only superiors but subordinates would say is unshaken, and you are a person, a soldier of good character. You have the ability, you show true strength, and you're somebody they trust.
That's awesome, and I just wanted to say, I know we're getting close here, but I just wanted to say that, look, authentic leaders look at ways to contribute to trust within their formation. Trustworthy leaders look at ways to contribute to the trust of their soldiers and their subordinates. We need all to look up within ourselves and not only quote the Army values, but live Army values and follow them. Because like I said earlier, trust is built when leaders take the hard right. And we need to do that. We need to be authentic, trustworthy, humble, approachable. And we also need to educate our soldiers that, hey, in order to be effective, we need to build trust in our organization. And that building that trust in our organization, meaning that we need to hold people accountable. Okay? We need to be consistent, not inconsistent, consistent with our actions. We need to have that, like I said earlier, that video and that audio in line.
Archie, great. We appreciate that commentary, and that sure, helps us kind of wrap our heads around this trust thing and what trust means to us as soldiers. We know that we have challenges these days. We know that many attacks happen on us, not only downrange, but happen, to our character, that happen to our livelihood, and that happen throughout all that we do. The key is we've got to keep trust. We've got to keep trust in our leaders. We've got to keep trust in our nation. This is the NCO Guide Podcast, podcast number 2. This week we're speaking on trust. The NCO Guide is sponsored by PowerPoint Classes, pptclasses.com. We ask that you engage us at the NCO Guide at danelder.com or call us on our hotline 254-853-4410. Till next week, thank you for listening to the NCO Guide.